Now, let's try and get in some perspective. And for that, let me welcome our first guest. I'm joined in by Dr. Mukesh Aghi, who's the President and CEO at USISPF. Many thanks to you, Dr. Aghi, for joining in on World 360. Given it was their first meeting after 16 months, especially after Operation Sindoor, also a period that witnessed much strain between New Delhi and Washington, what's your assessment of how much this bilateral has managed to achieve?
Well, the meeting between the President Trump and Prime Minister Modi was cordial. I think it was a touch point between the two leaders who have not met each other over a year ago. And they talked on multiple issues, and no joint statements were issued because it was more of a reconnecting between the two leaders to making sure that they're on the same platform or understand each other's position well. So I think from that perspective, the meeting went well.
When both the heads of state were referring to the press, interestingly, the US president highlighted G2, which, as we all know, is the partnership between China and the United States. Many are talking about how there's this renewed military cooperation with China, with the United States also dropping the word Indo from Indo-Pacific Command. There was no mention of Quad during this bilateral discussion between Prime Minister Modi and the US President. What do you make of those critics who are saying that the US President is choosing to prioritize China over India, unlike his first presidency?
So basically, when we look at the Quad, Rubio came in for 3 days to India, and there was a Quad meeting, which got back on its track itself. So there was no need to discuss Quad anymore because I think Rubio took the lead on that. And as far as China goes, G2, you have to understand in the US, the leadership sees China as a threat, both from a technology perspective, from a military perspective, from economic perspective, from critical mineral perspective. So overall, China is a stress point, which US is very cautious about. And that's where they see India as a partner which is willing to work with the US in dealing some of those critical issues. That's why if you look at India as playing a role, becoming more of an industrial base for US companies. India has become a GCC capital of the world, supporting almost 60% of those GCCs in India are American companies. We're seeing basically US ships coming in for repair into the Indian ports itself. So I would say overall, India is becoming much more important for the US while there are discussions about China, but the trade in every aspect, the relationship with India is moving in the positive direction.
Dr. Aghi, as far as the MOU between Iran and the United States is concerned, many are comparing it to the JCPOA and how this memorandum of understanding has failed to address Israel's threat to Lebanon, given that the IDF is continuing with its operations in Lebanon. How do you respond?
It's too early to say that this is beginning of the peace in the region, because I think the behavior of multiple parties will define how successful this MOU becomes into reality after 60 days and beyond that. Yes, we were surprised that Israel was not mentioned, while Lebanon was mentioned to be stopped from being attacked. But it's important also to understand that the whole objective behind this MOU was to make sure that the US economy and the global economy does not tank in every aspect. When you look at the cost of fuel in the US has gone above $4. The inflation has reached 4.2%. The food inflation is much, much higher. And that was impacting the potential for November midterm election in the US, where the Republicans were taking the heat because of the war in the Middle East. So I strongly believe that it's too early to say the impact of the MOU sign. We will know after 60 days as to what happens. But I think more important is there is a statement by the Iranians saying that they will not have a nuclear weapon, but they don't talk about as to what happens to the current fuel they have. Yes, they get immediately, they can sell the oil to the markets out there without any imposition from the US. And they're expecting roughly $300 billion investment from the neighboring region, and also almost $100 billion of their assets which are frozen. What is the timeline? That is not very clear.
Okay.
But I think it's important, at least this is a framework, and reality will come in once you start filling the framework into concrete steps. So we'll know better in the next 60 days than I would say now itself.
Sure, but let's talk about the energy crisis also, which is an outcome of what we witnessed in the Strait of Hormuz. Has the conflict in the Strait complicated the deal, especially compared to how much was achieved in the JCPOA, given that Israel also is an issue that remains unresolved?
Well, you have to look at, one thing which the Iranians have realized, that the bigger nuclear weapon is closure of Strait of Hormuz. And it doesn't take much to close that. And they can basically put pressure on the rest of the world if things don't go their way. So I think that's the one big outcome which has come out, is the weaponization of Strait of Hormuz. And that's not going to change. It'll get worse as time goes by, because within Iran, within the Revolutionary Guard, there are factions which are basically competing to get attention, competing to pick a fight with the external agencies itself. So we see that you will see basically a substantial amount of internal fight going on within Iran as they try to basically formalize the next 60 days, the MOU. Now, as far as Lebanon goes, which was Hezbollah, the proxy of Iranians, I don't know how long they'll sit back, because I think Israel has said very clearly that they will not withdraw their forces from 20-mile radius within Lebanon to protect the northern border. And Hezbollah has also basically learned how to use drones effectively. They're able to basically impact the Israeli forces, being able to kill Israeli forces. So I don't see how in mid to long term these two, Hezbollah and Israelis, will look at each other and not pick a fight.
Okay.
So there are a lot of moving parts here, a lot of precarious situation here, but time will tell as to how things go forward, especially once they start formalizing the MOU. So it's too early to say, but I think one thing nations have learned, especially in India, that you need to basically deleverage your source of energy from the Hormuz passageway, look at other alternatives. I think GCC countries also will start looking at setting up pipelines coming into the Arabian Sea. So I think overall the objective will be to deleverage the critical minerals, critical energy goods coming out of Strait of Hormuz, because Iran can weaponize that any day when it wants to.
All right. Dr. Mukesh Aghi, it was a pleasure having you here on World 360. Thank you so much for sharing those invaluable insights with us.